Hello, my name is Jonathan Lisserman and I'm the Associate Head Teacher at Hammersmith Academy. I'm in charge of the curriculum and all of the assessment and reporting that your child will receive while they're at Hammersmith Academy. Today I want to talk about our reports. I want to talk about all of the information that's on these reports and how you can best use that information to help your child to succeed, to be the best that they can be. So this is an example of a report from a Year 7 student who finished Year 7 last year. And as you can see, there's a lot of information, which we will go through in a minute at the top, but here you can see each module that the student receives a report has been completed. Now at the beginning of the year, only the first module would be completed and you'd receive a report. The second module would be completed later in the year, and so on until the report is complete by the end of the year, and you can see the journey of progression that the student has made. But to start with, we'll talk about this information at the top of the report. So we can see here along the top of the report we have the student's Key Stage 2 results. Now this is a student who received their Key Stage 2 results as a scaled score. That means for them to be an average student, they need a score of 100. 100 means they've reached the expected level at the end of primary. This student here has 93 in their reading. Now that still means they are around 100. They're about average in their reading for their age. In maths, the student got just above 100, so they're more mathematical, but they're still around 100 and just above the expected level. When the students come into Hammersmith Academy, they do a CATS test, and we can see here the results of that CATS test. So we have verbal, non-verbal, quantitative and spatial. So there are 4 tests, and again the average score, the national average, would be around 100. This student is slightly above in each of those tests, and they've got a mean score, an average score of 109. So slightly above average, but more or less an average student. As we go across further, we can see this student has a reading age of 15 and 2 months, and that's actually very good. They are 3 years beyond where we might expect them to be in terms of their chronological age. This child was 12 years old when they took this test. Fantastic attendance, 100%, as we would expect all students to be, or we would hope them to be. They must be above 94, but a great attendance. A little bit of naughtiness, there's some behaviour points there, 25 points, but also a lot of Vivo points where this student has done lots of positive things and been rewarded through Vivos. So this tells us about the child as they come into Hammersmith Academy, and just one difference, this Key Stage 2 result, if you have an older student, then they may have a Key Stage 2 test result which looks like this, when Key Stage 2 results were given as levels a few years ago. If you have a Key Stage 2 score which looks like this, then 4 was the average score for all students. This student happens to have a 5, so they happen to be above average. But levels went from 2, 3, 4 or 5. Some subjects may have had a 6, but the average was a 4. On the back of each report you will see a table that looks like this. This is our expected progress map, and it shows the journey of students as they move through the academy from Year 7 to Year 11. On the expected progress map you will see you only need to look at the year group that your child is currently in. So if your child is in Year 7, you just need to look at the row that deals with Year 7. If your child is in Year 8, you only need to look at this row which deals with Year 8. When the students come into the academy, we rank order all of the Key Stage 2 results, and we put the students into a band. in Year 7, in all years, there are 5 bands, or as we call them, flight paths. If your child is very high performing and they got a scaled score of between 113 and 120, or a level of between a 5B and a 6, they would go into flight path 5, the very top flight path, and they would have an end of year target that would be a 3.1. If we compare to our report, I can see here that this child in drama has been given a target of a 3.1. That means in drama, this child is excelling at drama and is a top performing drama student and therefore has the top performing end of year target. I'll move back to this table now. If a child has a scale score of between 0 and 90, and we had 6 children with a score of between 0 and 90 this year, they will be in the bottom flight path, the flight path 1, and their target for the end of the year, by the time they get to Module 7, would be a 1.3. Our student here is not in the bottom flight path, but they do have some targets as a 1.4. For example, in English, this student has a target of a 1.4 in English. They're in the second flight path for English currently. They have a target of 1.4. Now, when a student takes a Module 1 test, we rank order that test, or rank order all of the students who took that test, and again we put them into quintiles. We put them into bands. If your child remained in the same flight path that they came in on at Key Stage 2, their colour would be green and they would be considered to be on track. They've remained in the same position in the year group. If they did better and they went up a band, then they would go blue. We can see here this student was doing English and they clearly were attaining higher than their target grade, and they are blue. And in fact, they remained blue across the year. And that means that this child's target in Year 8 will go up. They are performing well above what we might expect them to be performing at. If a child performs well below where we would expect them to be, according to their position amongst the whole cohort, then they would turn red. If they were 2 flight paths below, they would turn red. And this happened for our student here in art. In art, in the first module, they were red. They should have been getting a... Let me just have a look. They should have been getting a 1.3, and actually they got a 1.1. This is 2 flight paths below where they should have been, and therefore they've turned red. Fortunately, they've turned that around, and after each module they have improved their result and they've performed well above where we would have expected them to be when they came in. In DT, this student had a target of a 2.2, which meant that they were average at DT, and across the year they remained average, which is why their colour remains green all the way across. So they were where we would have expected them to be. If a student gets orange, that simply means that the student is performing 1 flight path below where they came in at Key Stage 2. So really, the most important thing about this results is not the number. The number is not really hugely important here. What is very important is the colour. The colour tells you whether your child is performing at the level we would expect or if they're overperforming. So those are the real important things to discuss with your child. If I look across to this second section, the engagement in learning section, you can see that these are mapped in the same way as our steps are, our 7 modules. So every module, a student will get an engagement in learning number. Number 1 is outstanding, fantastically well behaved, absolutely engaged in learning, couldn't be better. 2 is good, they are doing everything that's required, they are working hard, but there are some slight improvements that could be made. A 3 represents a student who could, in a particular subject area, be working significantly harder. And a 4, I don't see any 4s on here, but if a student got a 4, it would mean that their behaviour, their engagement in learning was absolutely unacceptable. As you can see from this report, this child in general is performing pretty well. There's a couple of subjects, music and DT, where they are struggling compared to their academic ability. Also perhaps here in science, not performing quite as well. So these are areas that we would look at as a school and look to intervene. I look across at the behaviour and I can see actually in IT, this student isn't performing as well as they should be, but I also notice their behaviour in a few areas is a 3, and that could improve. And it's probably some of this behaviour, engagement in learning, perhaps homework is not being done. That means the child is not just struggling, but there are some things that they could do to change their attitude to that lesson that would improve that lesson. In music, it seems that the child is behaving well and has actually behaved exceptionally well at the end, but they are struggling with this subject. They're finding this harder than most other subjects, and perhaps they need further intervention, extra support at home, and really look at what the teacher is saying in the book, look at what the teacher is saying in their feedback to help that child improve and get to where they need to be. Hopefully, this describes all of the information that we have. Every module, the assessment description would change, so you know exactly what your child was being tested on. And if you have any queries about anything on the report, you can email the teacher by just writing their initial and first and surname, so rcross@hammersmithacademy.org or jsykes@hammersmithacademy.org. That would send an email directly to the teacher that's teaching your child. You could ask them any questions you would like to. Also check Show My Homework. Also look on Firefly to see what resources are available. I hope you found that useful. There's a huge amount of information on this report and a lot of information that you can take to really support your child in moving forward. There's also a lot of information about the teachers who are teaching your child that you can email to get more detailed information if you require it. You can also contact me on Jonathan Lisserman at hammersmithacademy.org. I hope you found it useful, and thank you for watching.